Hi guys. I just want to give you a little quick tip about blending tools or what I use to ink up the edges of cards or cutouts, especially using distress inks. So I have a variety of things here that I use, but the tool that I most go back to are these guys. All this is I went to the dollar store and I got one of those scrubby sponges. It's really important that you get the kind with the Brillo pad, or like that green Brillo pad on top, and then the bottom is the yellow sponge, because this green pad is very sturdy, so that when you're holding it, it gives you nice control. And then this, it's pretty sturdy itself, and that's why I use this mostly for my distress inks. Any tool you use is going to give you a different variation of how much ink you put on the item. So that's sort of why I use different things with different inks. Let me give you an example. So let's use Vintage Photo because it shows up better than Frayed Burlap does. Okay. So when I started inking up edges, I didn't have the money to get the Distress Inker, but I did have money to get the Recollections little edger. I don't remember what they call these. It's like Edge Inker or something like that. And I love these a lot, but the thing is these disintegrated so quickly when you did them on cards, because the edge of cards, you know, especially if you cut it, is really rough. So, okay, the first thing you can do is when you have your ink pad. And the reason why I'm talking mostly about distress ink is because you can ink up the edges with any type of ink, but with distress ink, it gives you a nice variation of tone when you edge it up the edges, and it's made for distressing edges. So, you know, the first way anyway does it is straight from the pad to the card. That gives you, and it all depends on what you're making, but it gives you a really harsh distressed edge. Lots of ink transfer, really harsh line, which is great. I use this a lot actually, but you know, it just depends on what you're going for. Then I decided on a lot of cards that I didn't necessarily want that. I wanted a nice soft edge, so this gives it to you. Even if you ink it up a second time, look how different and less intense that is. You know, really nice soft edge. You almost have to go through it a third time in order to see it. But this sponge just doesn't hold up well. So then I ended up getting, you know, the square ink blender a long time ago, but I don't know, there was just something about it that was irritating to me. I think this is Vintage Photo on here. I think it was because it was square, actually. It would give me a harsh line when I did this. The round one is really nice because it doesn't. It gives you nice, soft, blurry line, just like the Recollections one. Very soft, very pretty. Lays down the ink just nicely. Just gives you a hint of ink, so it kind of pops it up from a card. But then I didn't want to keep buying pads for the holder, because, you know, you want to spend your money on other things. And I think I saw somebody who just used a regular sponge one day. It might have been for paint, but then I sort of make the leap like, oh, you could probably use that with ink. So what I did was I bought one. And what I usually do is I do two sides. This one was deteriorating, that's why. I think this was my oldest one. And I've been using it for 3 years before it deteriorated. See on this one, there's black on one side, Vintage Photo on the other side. those are my two most used colors. So that's sort of why I did that. I tested it out on this one using, you know, the pigment ink pads, and it just didn't really work all that well. So I'll stick with it, my distress inks. And so all you do, same thing, ink it up. But it gave you like the same thing as the blending tool, but a little bit softer. And it held up better to me than the blending tool ink pads. So see, the blending tool gives you a really nice edge, but you know, this just gives you just as good. It's nice and soft, just lays down some color, just so it'll pop it up, you know, from a card a little bit more. So those are the differences. But now, oh, that's the other thing I hated, is changing out the pads on them. And you know, when you had the big square ink pads, the nice thing about the new little inkers is that you can store your pad right underneath the inker, or the inker, right underneath the mini distress pad. And so anytime you just want to switch out a pad, you can just go in, rip this one off, put this one on, and just go right in and start inking again. In fact, I haven't used my pistachio yet, so let's do that to see how much fun it is. Yeah, it's pretty. So anyway, so to sum up, my two favorite inkers are, you know, just using the sponge and then the round ink blending tool, not the rectangle one. And especially now that we have the, you know, the minis, and you know, you can just store individual pads underneath right there. It's just so nice and convenient. Then you don't have to worry about contaminating your pads or forgetting to change it out, and it just makes inking so much easier and so much more user-friendly. But these guys I'm probably always going to stick with and keep them on my desk, just because it's just real quick and easy just to go around the edges with them and not worry if, you know, this is going to disintegrate and if I have to buy a whole bunch more. So anyway, I just want to let you know, just in case you see it in a video and you're like, what is she doing now? Alright, thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!